Over the last few years, there's been a lot of talk about fungicide in corn. Today we want to discuss the early timing, not the tassel timing, but this early timing. And Darren, let's start off with this. What is the right timing between V4, V5 versus V6 or V7? Would you rather be a little early or a little bit late?
All right, well, if you are a manufacturer of fungicides, you want to have as wide a window as you possibly can because you want as many people as possible to be able to use your product.
Yep.
So you say, well, V4 to V7. Now that doesn't sound like it's that big a window. It's not, wow, gosh, it's only a few leaves, that's no big deal. But V4 corn I look at as being pretty short. V7 corn I look at as being really tall and a lot of leaves out there, because by the time you have 7 full collars, that's V7, you've probably got 10 leaves that are out. Well, that's quite a few leaves on a corn plant, and that's a good share of the leaves that are ever going to be there. So for me, I look at these as different phases. V4, V5, pretty similar, fairly early. And yeah, you could go ahead and start putting fungicide out. V6 or V7, much bigger corn, a lot more leaves out there. And the benefit of waiting just a little bit to that V6, V7 timing is that now you have so many more leaves out there and you can only protect the leaves that you cover with fungicide. So where I've seen more gains on our farm and other farms around the country, more yield gain, is if you could wait until V6, V7. Now, if you're in a situation where you have a lot of disease pressure in your area, by all means, you have to get that sprayed before the disease comes. So you may be forced to spray earlier, but in our area, we don't have a whole lot of leaf diseases that time of year because it's pretty hot and it's generally fairly dry. So we're waiting until V6, V7 and getting better gains consistently.
Most of the fungicide companies, though, are talking about plant health benefits, and we totally get that, especially with the strobel urine fungicides, products like Headline or Avito. But the other side of this is companies are telling people, well, hey, you should use products that have 2 different fungicides in there, because if there is some disease out there, you want to have 2 shots at the disease, number 1, and number 2, you don't want to have resistance build up to those strobel urines, because like on our own farm, we're using a strobel urine in the soil, we're using a strobel urine at this V4 to V7 kind of timing, usually preferably V6 or V7, and then potentially even again at tasseling time. I mean, if you're going to do 2 shots and possibly even 3 shots of the same fungicide, that's not a good thing either. So what a lot of people are looking at is one of the combinations, 2 of the most common combinations that are used in this early timing for corn are Fortix and Preaxor.
So when we're looking at those 2 main products, like Fortix, for example, it's Avito, which is strobel urine, plus a triazole, or Preaxor, which is Headline in the strobel urine family, plus Xemium, which is in the carboxamide family. So there's a couple different families of fungicides going on in both of those products. I think that's a good recommendation just in terms of disease resistance management, but also just to get more products out there to try and control disease, because you never really know exactly what disease is going to strike. We're, again, treating preventatively.
However, the whole thing with these fungicides is they're not systemic all up and down throughout the plant. So when you spray on a Preaxor or a Fortix product, you're treating the leaves that are there. The new leaves that come out are really not going to have protection. Now granted, I mean, the leaves you are spraying are the older leaves. They're really important at this early stage. You're going to get some plant health benefits that are going to work their way throughout the plant. But in terms of straight disease control, you're only going to have disease protection on the leaves that you treat today. So just kind of keep that in mind. And in terms of residual and how long these products are going to last, we're talking usually 1 to 2 weeks. Now there are companies that are going to say it's a month and 2 months, and that may be true with some of the plant health benefits, but in terms of the actual disease control, like if I've got X disease that's coming in and it's going to show up 2.5 weeks from now, am I counting on my Fortix or my Headline to really protect me? No, I'm going to have to spray again later on.
The other thing that I look at is when we're talking about this V4 to V7 window is a lot of times we're going to be spraying that fungicide with something else. I know most farmers that I'm talking to are thinking, well, I'm going to spray some Roundup, or I'm going to spray some Callisto, Laudis, Impact, Status, you name the post-emerge broadleaf herbicide in corn, and that may dictate what your timing is. For example, if you're spraying something that has dicamba in it, you may want to get that done as early as you could. Maybe it's V4, V5, that's probably as late as you want to go with dicamba. all of a sudden, all right, I want to put that fungicide out, but I'm not going to have time to make a second trip, so I'm going to have to go towards that V4, V5 timing. We're not saying that your fungicide isn't going to work and isn't going to give you some benefit in that timing. We're just saying from what we've seen in our farm and a number of other farms around the country, we've seen a little better yield gain from the fungicide portion of that mix, pushing it a little bit later. If you need the weed control, by all means, don't wait a few more leaf stages, because those weeds, especially if it's something like lamb's quarters or one of the pig weeds, they're going to grow quite rapidly out in your field, and you're going to suffer some yield loss from that more than what you're going to gain waiting with the fungicide.
Darren mentioned herbicides, and it is very common to throw a herbicide together with a fungicide, and for that matter, you can even throw an insecticide in there too. But when you do that, that's going to change what you're going to want for adjuvants. So if it's me and I'm out there spraying a Preax or a Fortix plus one of the broadleaf herbicides plus glyphosate, generally speaking, we're throwing ammonium sulfate in there and no other adjuvants. Some of the fungicide companies will talk about throwing crop oil in. There's no way that I want to do that with some of the different post-emerge herbicides like dicamba or status, for example. That's really going to heat things up if you've got all those products mixed together. So just make sure you're talking to your agronomist and you get the right spray adjuvants together with the mix that you use on your farm.
And as far as timing goes, we're talking about V4 to V7, somewhere in that window. And then the next time that we're normally spraying a fungicide would be after the corn is fully tasseled, and usually you're going to see all the silks out across your field just to be on the safe side before you start pulling the trigger on another fungicide, because there is a timing in there between V8 and tassel that corn plants are pretty sensitive, and you can actually cause some injury if you're putting the fungicide out at the wrong time, especially with certain surfactants.
Yeah, it's not really the fungicide so much, it's mainly the surfactant. So you get crop oil out there, or some of these other more harsh adjuvants together with the fungicide, and that can cause some problems. So don't get too worried about you're going to hurt your corn with fungicide. You're not. But all we're trying to say is there are two main timings in corn to spray fungicide. It's the early timing, it's the post-tasseling timing, silking right in that range. And for the early timing, we do think in many cases that can provide a decent investment, can give you some plant health benefits, but just take a look at some of these combination products, and we prefer a V6 or V7 timing to the V4 to V5 timing. That's when we've seen just a little bit better yield data.
Well, if you have a lot of our weed of the week, you're going to have to be leaning towards the early timing because it's going to be out there early in the season. Can you identify this week's weed?